Hi, this is Vicki with Crafting for Fun. Today I want to share with you how I made this card. This card was created using the Flower Patch stamp set by Stampin' Up. But what I was really trying to do was to play with some of my bolder floral image stamps, the ones that have more of a solid feel to the background. I wanted to create a background image for my card using those types of stamps. And I also wanted to use vellum to apply a sentiment to the front of my card. So here you can see I have stamped kind of a bold sentiment on the front on a strip of vellum. And I like that look because it doesn't completely cover up what I have stamped in the background. This could be achieved using any of a number of stamp sets. So if you don't have the Flower Patch stamp set, feel free to experiment with other bold, solid images that you might have in your stash. And you could use any sentiment that you want. You would just need to adjust the size of your vellum strip on the front. So let me gather my supplies and I will walk you through how I made this card. You'll need the following supplies in order to make this card. You'll need cardstock to create your card base. This cardstock measures 8 1/2 inches by 5 1/2 inches, and it's been scored in the center to make an A2 size card. You'll need 2 pieces of white or off-white cardstock, one for the inside liner and one for the front panel of your card, and this measures 4 by 5 1/4. Each is 4 by 5 1/4. I'm using a piece of craft foam to give my card a little more dimension and stability. This piece measures 3 3/4 by 5 inches. And this is just regular craft foam, like 2mm thick craft foam that you can buy at any craft store. I like that instead of using a bunch of dimensionals. And then you'll need a scrap of vellum. This is vellum cardstock, and this piece measures 1 1/2 inches by 5 3/4. But what's important here is that your piece be 5 3/4 inch long and wide enough to hold the sentiment that you plan to stamp on it. So you'll have to adjust yours depending on which sentiment stamp you decide to use. I'm using the following stamps. I'm using the Flower Patch stamp set from Stampin' Up, but you could substitute any floral stamp set that you might have, and ones that work nice are ones that have a lot of solid area rather than an open. I'm going to be using a sentiment from Paper Tray Ink from the Think Big Favorites stamp set. I'm going to use this one that says "Thanks for all you do." And then for my inside sentiment, I am using, oops, pardon me, I'm using a stamp from Paper Smooch's Spiritual Sampler, and it says, let me see, which one did I use? "I feel so blessed to have you in my life." So I'm going to use "Thanks for all you do. I feel so blessed to have you in my life," and that's going to go on the inside. Then I'm going to use the following ink colors. I'm going to use Melon Mambo, which is the same color as my base cardstock. I'm going to use Coastal Cabana and Pool Party, which are 2 coordinating light greenish blue colors, and I'm going to use Pear Pizzazz for my leaves. These are all Stampin' Up colors, but again, you could substitute whatever colors you like for your floral images and your leaf images, and that would work just fine. I'm also going to be using some VersaFine black ink. And this will work for my sentiment. I'm going to stamp my sentiment in VersaFine ink and then emboss it using some clear detail embossing powder, but you could also stamp yours using something like StazOn ink and not emboss it. So that is just sheerly a preference thing. And then you'll need some tape in order to assemble your card. So let me get set up here and I'll show you how I made my card. Okay, I have my 2 pieces of cardstock, my white pieces here, and they're on just on a foam mat to give me a spongier surface to stamp on, since I'm using photopolymer stamps. If you're using stamps that have the red rubber with the foam, cling foam underneath them, you won't need this stamp mat. And just to protect my mat, I'm going to put a piece of regular paper underneath here because I'm going to be stamping off the edges. So one of these pieces is for the inside of my card and one is for the outside of my card. So I'm going to begin by stamping. And the first color I'm going to use is that Melon Mambo color, which is the dark pink. And I'm going to ink up my largest flower image, and I'm going to make sure I have really good coverage on it. And I'm going to, there really is no rhyme or reason to how you stamp this. The important thing is to have very, very good ink coverage. So that's a nice stamp. And I'll stamp this one here. So I'm going to do about 2 of these on the front. And then just to make my card a little more decorative on the inside, I'm going to also stamp 1 on my inside panel. And I'll just do it there. So I'm finished with this stamp, and I'll set it aside and close this ink pad. And next I'm going to grab my Pool Party ink, which is my lighter of my 2 blue-green colors, and another flower image, and I'm going to stamp. Make sure that's really well inked. And I'm going to stamp again, and I want to get all or most of this flower because I'm going to be stamping a center to that. And let's do it again, and I'll get it. There we go. And maybe just a little bit more. Make sure I got that inked. There we go. I'm going to set that aside, and I'm going to do 1 of these for my inside. I think I'll do it on the opposite corner. I'm going to close that up. And I'm done with this stamp. So now I have a stamp, an image here that's meant to be the center of a flower. And I'm going to use a slightly darker shade just to add the centers to these flowers. Didn't do a very good job of hitting the center there, but that will be fine. And now I'm done with that, and I'm going to bring my leaf stamp in. And I have my Pear Pizzazz ink, which is a light green color. And I'm going to add 1 leaf to this over here. Maybe like so. And add some to this piece. And I can even just go right here in the center. And I'm trying to kind of vary my direction. Let's see if I can get a little tiny bit here. There we go. So, I am finished with these panels. I have 1 here for the front of my card, and 1 that I'll use for the inside of my card. So let me clear away all my inks, and I'll show you how we're going to begin stamping our sentiments. Okay, I've set up my MISTI now, and I'm ready to begin stamping my sentiments. The first one I'm going to do is that one that says, "Thanks for all you do." And it's a larger stamp, and I'm going to stamp that on my banner to go across the front of my card. So I'm going to put it down here in the lower corner of my MISTI, and I'm going to use some magnets to hold that piece in place. And I'm going to just center it on this strip. Now you might notice that I have a score mark on one end of this piece, and I'll explain that here in just a moment. But I'm just kind of centering this up, and when I have it the way I want it, I'm going to go ahead and close the door of my MISTI to pick up that stamp. Oop, and it's a really sticky stamp, so it did pull up my vellum, so I'm just going to replace it right exactly where it was. Right in that corner. And I'm going to use my VersaFine ink. I use a little piece of tape to hold it closed. And I'm going to go ahead and ink up that stamp on the lid of my MISTI. And I'll move that over so you can see what I'm doing. I'm just inking that stamp up really well. And then I'm going to close the door on my MISTI and give it a good press. And if I don't get good coverage the first time, the beauty of the MISTI is that I can go back and add additional ink. But I think I have a nice dark image the first time. I'm happy with that. So I just have a scrap of paper here so I can close the door of my MISTI without getting ink on the inside. Move it out of the way. And then I'm going to take some clear embossing powder, and this is Ranger Ultra Fine Clear Embossing Powder. And I'm going to shake off the excess. Now I really should have treated this piece first with my powder tool, but I actually forgot. And in this case, I don't think it's going to make much difference. If you are working with colored paper, it is essential that you get that on there so you don't have stray powder. I'm going to get my heat tool and I'm going to heat that up and emboss it. I'll be right back. I've heated my sentiment and melted the embossing powder, and now I have a nice shiny sentiment on my vellum strip. Now, I told you I would explain about this little embossed mark. I knew that I wanted a piece that would go across my 5 1/4 inch panel. So my panel was 4 inches tall by 5 1/4 inches wide. This piece is 5 3/4 inch long. So I scored 1/4 of an inch from this end, and I'm going to go ahead and fold that. Then I'm going to bring back my panel, my front panel for my card. And I'm going to decide how I want to orient this, and I think I'll just do it like that. And so you see I can just hook this over the end of my card there. So I'm going to turn it over. I'm going to grab my tape runner and apply a little adhesive along this edge of my card, and I'm just going to wrap my sentiment around there. Now I'll stretch the rest of my sentiment completely across the card, making sure to hold it as flat as possible. And it actually works out best if you kind of lay it on a hard surface, and then go ahead and fold the rest of that vellum around. And I could have left a little bit more. I was kind of being stingy there with my piece. And then adjust it to make sure that it's straight and to your liking, and that is. And so I'm going to flip that little vellum piece back, put some adhesive down, and push that down in place, and that will hold my vellum strip nice and secure. It'll lay nice and flat on the front of my card. Now I'm going to turn that whole panel over, put some adhesive on the back, and I've put a very generous amount because I'm going to go ahead and add that foam piece that I told you about. This is just that 2 millimeter thick craft foam, and that's going to pop my whole front panel up on my card. Whoops. Then I'm going to bring my card base in. I'm going to go ahead and fold it in half. And I should have had my bone folder handy. Now I like to go ahead and add the tape to the front of the card because it's easier to apply it to the paper than it is to apply it to that foam piece. You just have to be careful not to go too close to the edge, or your panel won't stick. Or your tape will show, I'm sorry. So I'm going to go ahead and center this up on my card. And of course it's always harder when you can't get over your card because my head would be in the camera. So there we go. Good enough. Okay, so there's the front of my card. Now I'm going to open my card up, and I'm going to need to put this panel on the inside, but I haven't added a sentiment yet. So I'm going to go ahead and do that. I'm going to bring back my Misty, and I'm going to remove my sentiment here and set it to the side for cleaning in a moment. And I'm going to bring back my panel that I've already stamped, and I can decide how I want it oriented in my card. I think maybe I'll put it like that. So I'm going to put some magnets in to hold that in place. I'm going to lay my sentiment where I would want it to be. I'm going to leave a little room for writing here on the bottom. And when I'm happy with how straight it is, that's pretty good, go ahead and press that down. And again, I'm going to use VersaFine black ink to ink my sentiment. And since my card panel is pushed all the way over here in the corner, if I'm not happy with how dark the sentiment is stamped, I can always go back and re-stamp it. That's the beauty of the Misty. And I'm pretty happy with that. Just going to make sure I got a good coverage. There we go. Let me go ahead and take that. This is my little way of protecting the inside of my Misty until I can get that stamp cleaned. I just stick a piece of paper in there. I'm going to bring my card back, and I'm going to go ahead and add the inside panel. And this card is complete. So it's a super easy way to, hold on just a second, I'm not happy with that placement. It's a super easy way to use floral stamps that you have, especially the more solid floral images, to get a completely different look. So I hope you enjoyed today's card. If you have any questions, please email me at craftingforfun@gmail.com and check back for more crafting ideas on my YouTube channel. Thank you.